What's up, everyone? Welcome to Season 2, Episode 9 of the Patel and Kumar Show. I'm your host, Shivam Patel, coming to you live from San Antonio, Texas. And my co host, Mr. Kumar, coming to you live from Mumbai, India. And Mr. Kumar, what an amazing show we're going to have today. We have special guest Scott Flemming, the technical director of NBA India. We're going to talk all about the NBA around the association, Mr. Kumar. But good evening to you.
Namaste, Mr. Patel, and thank you very much for those welcoming words. And as you said, it's going to be an exciting show. And this is Mr. Kumar coming to you live from Mumbai on this Patel and Kumar NBA Talk Show Season 2, Episode 9. And of course, as he mentioned, we're going to have Scott Flemming, the technical director of the NBA Academy India. But we're going to also talk about a little bit about the NBA news. And of course, are the Lakers going to drop down below the sixth rank in the West? And is Steph Curry going to leave the Warriors?
Man, we have such exciting topics to cover today. And again, like Mr. Kumar said, our question is, will the Lakers fall out of the top six in the West? So everybody put your comments in the chat section below, and we'll get to that section. And feel free to, to chime in. Me and Mr. Kumar love the engagement, Mr. Kumar. But let's get started talking about the around the association. So we're going to show the standings in the Eastern Conference. It's very tight right now, with the Brooklyn Nets and the Sixers, for vying for that top spot. Right now, the Nets hold a slight edge, Mr. Kumar, and the Bucks are breathing down their neck at number 3.
Absolutely. I think the top three is pretty much no competition in the East. It's going to be between the 76ers. I mean, Nets, who are ranked one right now, just half game behind is the 76ers. And Joel Embiid is back, so they're going to give a fight to the Nets. And then, of course, the Bucks. But after that, from that 4th to 10th rank, it's going to be anybody's game. I feel that there's going to be a lot of shuffling in between that, that 4th to 8th ranked teams because everybody is just separated by like half a game. So it's going to be a tough situation for some of those teams who are trying to make that push. But I think there's a little bit of an advantage this season as well because they have the play-in tournament. So those 9th and 10th ranked team do have an opportunity to probably qualify as the 7th and 8th ranked team and qualify for the playoffs.
Yes, it is definitely, they have a chance, with the Chicago Bulls, maybe the Pacers. But I've been really impressed with, the Nets and the, Sixers specifically. They've really, separated themselves from the pack, with the Nets. It's just, with all the injuries that they've had, James Harden is now out for 10 days, due to injury. So Kyrie picks up the load. They completely annihilated the Pelicans last night. And then the Sixers, Joel Embiid comes back. He has a dominating performance against the Celtics. He looks like, that he could get back into the race of the MVP, possibly Mr. Kumar. But the Sixers are playing really good basketball. And even the, Milwaukee Bucks, Mr. Kumar, True Holiday is fitting in nicely, with Giannis and Chris Middleton. They feed off well off of one another. He's finding his spots to shoot, to facilitate. I think he's been a huge addition for the Milwaukee Bucks. And of course, his defense is pretty stifling also. So I think he's been very valuable to them, so far in this short stint with the Milwaukee Bucks.
Absolutely. And, the extension that they gave him has made him much more secure in the lineup. So it's the lineup of Giannis, Chris Middleton, and Drew Holiday. It's a long haul for the Bucks. So they have invested in these three players, and I think they're going to be a little bit, certain that these three players are going to continue playing for at least some period of time. So but the Atlanta Hawks, they fell below the pack. A few games, but after Nate McMillan took over as the interim head coach, they've been playing really well. Of course, but I just don't know if the Heat, the Celtics have really got that energy in order to come back into that top 4, teams in the East.
No, I don't think they have that energy. As you said, I think the Heat are just lacking, that star power. Jimmy Butler is great, but I think the NBA has kind of figured him out now after that, nice run in the playoffs. He's not getting to his spots. He's not shooting with the same efficiency. I think he's a little bit too passive, Mr. Kumar. Tyler Hero's taking a little step back, as well as Duncan Robinson. Bam is playing well, but not at the level that he was playing in the playoffs. The Celtics, we can talk the whole show about them, how horrible they've been. I think they're not listening to Brad Stevens, Mr. Kumar. They have the star power, but if you don't, buy into the coach, I think his message is getting watered down a little bit, and they've underachieved. But I think those two are the most disappointed teams, so far, in the Eastern Conference. And the Hawks and the Hornets, Mr. Kumar, have taken advantage of that, and they've risen. And the Hornets without LaMelo Ball, he may or may not come back for the rest of the season, but we'll see, Mr. Kumar.
And the Knicks are holding on to that eighth position. They're playing decently well, and let's hope that they qualify for the playoffs after a very, very long time. I think New York fans are going to be very happy if they qualify for the playoffs.
Yes, they will. We'll see. Karan Madoka came on our show season 1. He's a huge Knicks fan, so I'm sure he's hoping that the Knicks are going to qualify. We'll see, Mr. Kumar. But let's talk about the Western Conference standings, which is a little bit more competitive, I should say. The Jazz, of course, are holding that number 1 spot, Mr. Kumar. They've been impressive. They've not fallen off since the All-Star break, which has been a surprise to me. The Suns, are right there. Devin Booker is really playing well. Chris Paul is doing his thing. DeAndre Ayton's being more aggressive. The Clippers are also, playing good basketball. The West it's wide open, Mr. Kumar. Any of these two teams can get hot in the playoffs and, make a push.
The Jazz, of course, lost to the Suns in overtime. I think today morning in India, which is last night for you. I think that was, a good matchup between Devin Booker and Donovan Mitchell. But good overtime win for the Phoenix Suns. But the mid-pack, it's wide open. It's wide open. The Clippers, the Nuggets, the Lakers, the Trailblazers. It's anybody's game. There's gonna be a huge shuffle in that mid-pack. But the playoffs. Who qualifies for the playoffs? We're gonna discuss that very shortly in the next section. Is whether the Lakers are going to further and probably be play-in tournament championship team, defending champions, coming into the play-in tournament. Of course, it's compounded by the fact that they have 3 major injuries. Hopefully, they have Drummond back in the lineup tomorrow, I think. So let's see. But it's going to be a very tough competition, even for the play-in tournament. The Warriors, the Spurs, the Mavericks, everybody's going to make a push. It's tough competition in the West.
It really is. There's a lot of high quality teams. I've just been impressed by the Suns this year. They are impressive. They still don't play that much defense, Mr. Kumar. That could bite them, but you can't take away from how they're playing. The Clippers are slowly underrated. I know, I've kind of, jumped on the Clippers bandwagon in the West, Mr. Kumar. Paul George is playing at a nice level. I think he's going to have to continue to play at a high level in the playoffs. Kawhi Leonard is doing his thing. He's playing back-to-backs this year, Mr. Kumar. So that's pretty good. Rajon Rondo has already made a difference for the Clippers. They're closing out games. He's right now facilitating, not looking for a shot, but when he starts scoring, it's going to be really tough to stop, Mr. Kumar. And Bhushan is saying the 2 Ds, Donovan and Devin, are going to be legends. Oh, they are already superstars, Bhushan. And I would love to see a series, in the playoffs with Devin Booker and Donovan Mitchell. Because we already saw Donovan Mitchell and Jamal Murray, Mr. Kumar. But I think Donovan Mitchell and Devin Booker, that's going to be fireworks, must-see TV. But we'll see what's going to happen, But a lot of teams are playing well. There's a lot of sneaky teams that can come, maybe the Portland Trailblazers can make a little run with Damian Lillard. We'll see, Mr. Kumar.
Thanks, Muthurangam, for tuning into the show.
Thank you.
Thank you for giving us that compliment. Hope you tune in to every episode. And fans, thank you very much for your comments. Please bring up those comments. That makes this show much more exciting.
Exactly.
We can answer your questions. We just cannot keep commenting. LeBron, AD, Andre, of course, Bhushan.
Big 30.
I'm looking forward to having all 3 of them on the court pretty soon. I think Andre Drummond would be the first one, and then hopefully we have Anthony Davis, who may come back probably in a week or 10 days. So it's going to be exciting. Hopefully, the Lakers can still hold on to their position in the West till these guys come back.
Yeah, it's like you're right now. They're just treading water, Mr. Kumar. Of course, like I said, we're going to be getting to the Lakers in our next segment. We will also wanted to, throw in the plug that Scott Flemming, the technical director of NBA India, is going to be joining us for the Indian Third section in just just about 10 minutes or so. So be sure everybody to stay tuned for that. We're going to have an exciting discussion, Mr. Kumar. But yeah, back to the West. I think right now, like it's just going to be dependent on which team stays healthy and which teams are going to have their horses back. Because if the Lakers can be fully healthy, I expect them to be in the conference finals, vying for the NBA finals, as well as the Clippers. And I still think, the Jazz and the Suns are still a tier below the Clippers and the Lakers, even if they are fully healthy, because they don't have the experience, in the playoffs. The Jazz, lost in the first round last year. I know it was a very high intensity series, but the Suns, Devin Booker has never been to the playoffs before. We don't know how he'll play, Mr. Kumar. So I think that's still that inexperience factor that's going to be holding back the Suns
Yeah.
and the Jazz.
Just imagine if the Lakers qualify as the eighth ranked team and the Jazz, having played a wonderful season, they have a matchup between the Lakers and the Jazz just in the first round. I mean, how unlucky is that? Because they would be like, hey, I mean, we've been the best team in the NBA, and still we're going to face the Lakers in the
That's the
first
present,
round.
Mr. Kumar. You've been the best team. Your present is facing the Lakers. Even the Suns. It could be a 2-7 matchup with the Suns and the Lakers. And I'm going to pick the Lakers. If they're fully healthy, Mr. Kumar, I don't care what these teams are. I'm going to pick the Lakers. And I think it'll be in convincing fashion too, But yeah, that would be a huge bummer for the Jazz.
See, I think the road is gonna be tough for the Lakers because of just the personnel that they have right now. But I think of course, I would bet on having bet on LeBron James winning a playoff series rather than a Devin Booker or a Donovan Mitchell. But it's going to be a tough road for the Lakers if that happens.
It is going to be a tough road. And Bouchon saying the Lakers have added more depth and signing Ben McLemore. Yeah, I think he's just going to be like a spot up shooter like J.R. Smith. For depth purposes. He'll be
I
all
think
right.
I think it's going to be a choice between Wes Matthews and Ben McLemore. I don't think Ben McLemore is going to get more than 10 minutes a game.
Even that, yeah.
Even that is pretty high. I think he's going to be a backup to Wes Matthews. But I think it just adds a little bit more depth, and hopefully, he can still shoot 38% from the three, which is a little bit better than some of the other shooters. So
and he plays more.
We gotta wait. We gotta wait and watch. And he did play a good for the Houston Rockets last season, and even in the bubble.
Yeah.
So I think he'll be a useful asset.
Yeah, he will be. And Lakers fans, again, in our next segment, we're going to be doing a full Lakers. Will the Lakers, fall out of the top six? So I want to hear your thoughts, Lakers fans. Are you guys worried, or is everything going to be fine when LeBron James and Anthony Davis comes back? I think I know Mr. Kumar's what he's going to say, but we'll see. We'll see.
I think I'm going to go with Swapnil Sharma, who sees the Lakers as the champions.
And
I see the Lakers. I see the Lakers as the champions as well. So there's a huge Laker fan base that is tuning into our show. So I think we need to have a Lakers content every single show so that these people tune in.
It hurts me to say this, but yeah, we have to. It pains me to say this, but the Lakers are back and strong, Mr. Kumar. They have two of the top 5 players in the NBA, so yeah. But we're going to be getting to that discussion in a few minutes. One more topic we got to talk about, Mr. Kumar: the top 25 under 25. So ESPN did a list ranking the top 25 NBA players under the age of 25. And I'll just give you the top 5. Number 1 was Luka Doncic. Number 2 was Zion Williamson. 3, LaMelo Ball, which was a little surprising. Number 4 was Donovan Mitchell. And number 5 was Jason Tatum. So what are your initial thoughts about this list, Mr. Kumar?
Absolute crap. That's the only word I have. I don't even know how LaMelo Ball fights to be in the top 3 in this list. I mean, Devin Booker is not on this list in the top 5. I think Donovan Mitchell has dropped down to 4. I can still agree with Luka Doncic. He has been phenomenal for Mavericks, and he's been a phenomenal player as well. But Zion Williamson, yes, he's getting there. I mean, he's a great player. He's shooting. He's got a record of 20 plus points on 50% field goal percentage, and he's beaten the record of Shaquille O'Neal. But I
Yeah.
think it's just one more season away. So Swapnil, you're totally right. This list is totally stupid, and I don't know if LeVar Ball paid some money to ESPN to get LaMelo Ball on that top 3 there.
Oh man, he might have, Mr. Kumar. Exactly. This list is crazy. A lot of inconsistencies. Like Mr. Kumar said, Devin Booker is number 8, ladies and gentlemen. That does not
How
make any.
can how can he be lower than De'Aaron Fox? I mean,
That's what I'm saying.
That Fox is me. It's totally Fox me out.
Exactly. De'Aaron Fox is a good player, but he's just not. He's just on a bad team, Mr. Kumar. He's 6th. Ben Simmons is 7. I don't think Ben Simmons should have been ahead of Devin Booker either. Bam Adebayo is 9, and Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, who's underrated, is 10. But yeah, back to LaMelo Ball. He has contributed to winning this year, and he does have a high ceiling. But you never know. We've seen players have good rookie seasons and not been able to carry it out the rest of their career, and maybe have hit the wall a little bit too early. So the jury is still out on LaMelo Ball. But I want to talk about Zion Williamson. I think he deserved to be at number 2. Like Mr. Kumar gave you the stats already. He's crazy. He's 3rd in PER, Mr. Kumar, this year. 63% field goal percentage, albeit his shots are all near the rim, shooting a lot of layups and dunks, but still, he's able to get a shot up on the trees. He's only shooting like 1 3 a game. Yeah, Busha and Devin Booker is always underrated. He really is, because when he was losing, Mr. Kumar, we criticized him, or not we, the media criticized him, saying that he's just putting empty stats, for losing. But now that he's putting those same stats and they're winning, he's getting punished. And I know he's 24, Mr. Kumar, so he's a little bit older than a lot of these players. But he's a superstar, and he has a chance to not only win MVPs later in his career, but also win a championship. And I think that goes a long way into showing how valuable he is to the Suns.
He is. He has been phenomenal. I think it all started, like, his ascent really started in the bubble last season. He really carried the entire Phoenix Suns. They were 8-0 in the bubble, and they continued that momentum this season as well. And they're ranked number 2 in the West, which is one of the toughest conference compared to the East. But it just it's just strange. I think this list has been put together by a bunch of people who are, probably sitting around at the table having a couple of beers, and they're like, "Hey, let's put a list of, top 25 under the age of 25," and they just came up with that list. But I don't think there's any criteria in terms of how do
Yeah.
you select this list, because if he's not in the top 5, I think nobody else deserves to be in the top 5.
Yep, exactly. And Stephen A. went on a little rant on ESPN, criticizing this list. He was also critical of LaMelo Ball, of course, Devin Booker. But someone I want to talk about, Mr. Kumar, is, Donovan Mitchell. Do you think he deserved to be at number 4, or was that a little bit too high, Mr. Kumar? Because he is a superstar. But I wanted to get your thoughts about Donovan Mitchell and the Jazz.
I think he's a top 5. He's a top 5 player, certainly, because in the last 3 or 4 years, you can really see how his maturity has improved in terms of carrying this Jazz team.
Yeah.
So it's important to note that they're one of the top teams in the West. They're the top team in the West right now, and that's one of the primary reasons is because of Donovan Mitchell. But it's also a team effort by the Jazz. They've had good supporting cast, Jordan Clarkson, Rudy Gobert. But I think Donovan Mitchell deserves to be in that list, at least in the top 5. Okay, let me just say my top 5 would be.
Okay, let's hear it.
One,
Let's hear it.
yeah, one would be Luka Doncic.
Yeah. Yeah.
2 would be Devin Booker.
I agree.
3 would be Zion Williamson. 4 would be Donovan Mitchell, And fifth, maybe Jason Tatum, yes. But the only problem with Jason Tatum is I think he's still not able to carry a team like Boston Celtics. So there's a lot of load on him, and I think that's what is putting pressure on him.
And I don't think he's that great of a facilitator, Mr. Kumar. He's more of just a score first kind of guy. I'll get mine. Everybody else can get yours, but I think he's more of a scorer's mentality. But I'm glad you said I agree that Devin Booker should be ahead of Donovan Mitchell. They're the same age, 24, but I think Devin Booker is just a little bit better than Donovan Mitchell. And yeah, your list, I actually agree with your list, Mr. Kumar. It's pretty spot on. Maybe, Trae Young should have been in the top 10. Maybe he got excluded. Maybe John Morant, we'll see. And Boucher, yep, go Spurs, go. So I know Spurs are struggling. They got annihilated last night in Denver.
Some fans, just have the habit of licking up to some of the hosts. I mean, this is like, come on. I mean, hey, Bhushan, a shout out for me as well.
That was, oh man, but Bhushan is a Lakers fan, Mr. Kumar. So he kind of gave you, a little shout out. Once the Lakers won the championship. But let's talk about the Lakers. That's a perfect segue, Mr. Kumar. So I'm going to ask all the Lakers fans in India, led by Mr. Kumar. Will the Lakers fall out of the top 6 in the West, Mr. Kumar? Will they be taking part in the play-in tournament?
That says no. My gut says no. I think it's just carrying the next 4 or 5 games. Of course, Drummond comes back very soon, and hopefully we get Anthony Davis back in a week's time. And if that happens, then they can probably win a few more games, and probably be in that 5th, 6th position in the West.
I think they're going to finish top 5 actually, because I think right now, when they're treading water, they had a nice win, against the Toronto Raptors, albeit against a weaker team. But I think they're starting to play better. Shooters, being more aggressive. Kyle Kuzma's coming into his game a lot more, knowing that he is one of the go-to players right now. Oh, Bhushan gave you your shout out, Mr. Kumar. Vinod for the Lakers. So there you go, Mr. Kumar got a shout out from Bhushan. And I get and shout out to Bhushan and shout out to everybody watching the show. Thank you so much for tuning in and for putting your comments. Sharma Drummond will be fresh. Yes, he will be for sure. Sharma, thank you again for watching. But I think the Lakers are going to finish, 5 or 6, Mr. Kumar. I think, Anthony Davis is going to come back sooner rather than later, maybe, next week or the week after that. They're starting to develop more of an identity on the defensive end on the floor. I think that's what a big reason that they've been struggling, because they're scoring, but they can't stop anybody. And they still have, talented scorers, Montrezl Harrell, Taylor Horton-Tucker, Marcus Saul, Kyle Kuzma, Dennis Schroeder. So they have a complete team around them, Mr. Kumar.
I just want to make a point. I think Marc Gasol has started playing better after they drafted Drummond.
Yeah, he has. I think he has because he before he would be for his pick and pop, so he's shooting the ball a lot better. He's still slow on defense, but the main reason
he had 4 blocks. He had 4 blocks the other night against against Toronto Raptors, and he had 13 points, I think 6 or 7 assists and like 4 blocks. I mean, I think that's the best performance I've seen in this season for the Lakers.
But you can't count on it. He's still a little bit.
Of course. Yeah. I mean, I'm just trying to point out that the last 2 games he's been more involved and more. I mean, he looks at least 50% of what a Mark.
Yeah, and they needed big man depth, because before, now they have at least Drummond, who starts. They can bring Gasol off the bench. They have Montrezl Harrell, so they have some bigs that they can throw at like the Jokic, at the Gobert, in the West, and Nurkic. So I think that the Lakers got some necessary big man depth that's going to really help them. Bhushan is saying Lakers are going to win it all for the late Elgin Baylor. We'll see. Last year, they won it for the late great Kobe Bryant, Mr. Kumar. So let's see what's going to happen. But I think this, offense is not a problem for the Lakers. It's just the defense I've been disappointed at, this year. The perimeter defense just allowing, players to go do straight line drives, to the basket, allowing a lot of open shots. offensive rebounds. And I think the Lakers have, sharpened that up a little bit. But I want to see them continue to play at a high level because they're right now on this road trip, Mr. Kumar. They play the Heat tonight. They're going to play the Nets again, the Knicks. So let's see how they perform on this road trip. It's going to go a long way into determining what their seed is going to be before
I
LeBron and Anthony Davis comes.
I hope they at least come out like 2-3 from this 5-game road trip of the 1-1 in Toronto. At least it's 2-3, and it's not worse.
Yeah, we'll see. I think they can maybe beat the Knicks, Mr. Kumar. We'll see. I don't know about the Heat in the Nets, but we'll see. At least, I see their body language that they're playing with more confidence. They're like they expect the shots to go in. They're trusting their teammates more. They're playing more aggressively. They're playing more of a cohesive unit. At least I like that, and that's encouraging on this road trip, Mr. Kumar.
Yeah, I think let's move on to our next topic. Of course, we're going to be joined by Scott, the technical director of NBA Academy India, who will be joining us in the India. But I think there's just been rumors that LeBron James, after the All-Star night, of course, he said he enjoyed playing with Steph Curry and that he started recruiting Steph Curry to the Lakers. I mean, is he going to leave the Warriors? Do you think so?
I don't think so. He shouldn't leave the Warriors because he's so beloved there, Mr. Kumar. He's one of the main reasons the Warriors got built up from being one of the bottom feeders in the West to now being one of the, having 3 championships. I think that he's beloved. I think he should stay. The Warriors are going to offer him a supermax contract to be able to try to get him to stay. But I think he's already built a home there, Mr. Kumar, and I think he should stay with the Warriors. I don't think he should team up with LeBron James.
I mean, the point is not whether, we advise him to stay or not. The point is whether the Warriors are going to be a championship contender again. I don't think that's going to happen. I don't think they're going to happen anytime soon, even if Klay Thompson comes back. One is because they cannot just rely on Klay Thompson, Steph Curry, and Draymond Green in order to, probably win a championship. And I don't think Kelly Oubre or Andrew Wiggins are going to be those depth players who are going to help the Warriors be a championship team. So the only question is whether Steph Curry thinks he can be in this team and still contend for a championship. But the way the roster is built and with the salary, I think it's going to be a very, very tough situation for the Warriors because they're already probably the highest luxury tax-paying team because they owe like $43 million to Steph Curry, about $30 million to Klay Thompson, about $22 million to Draymond Green, and under $29 million to Andrew Wiggins.
Well, I think they can get back, maybe not contend for a championship, but at least be, in the conversation, maybe get to the Western Conference Finals because we can't forget how good Klay Thompson is, one of the best shooters, in NBA history. James Wiseman is going to be a year older. He's going to really develop, Mr. Kumar. Draymond Green's going to do his thing. I think they're going to get another high draft pick, maybe. We'll see what happens depending on if they make the play-in or not. I think they can build around their depth. Maybe they can get rid of Wiggins or Oubre and maybe get another valuable player that fits their system a little bit more. And Steve Kerr is, a really high-quality coach. So I maybe not win the championship, but at least be in the conversation, Mr. Kumar. And I think that'll be enough for Steph Curry to be able to be comfortable in San Francisco and knowing that he can maybe be in the conversation. And I think that's all he wants, Mr. Kumar.
Well, for Lakers fans, I hope Steph Curry teams up with LeBron.
Oh, come on.
Come on. Just imagine.
Mr. Kumar? Oh, come on.
Come on. The Brooklyn Nets can pretty much draft everybody else apart from Michael Jordan, and Steph Curry cannot come to the Lakers. What kind of a deal is that?
Brooklyn Nets have a big 3. Aldridge and Blake Griffin are washed, Mr. Kumar. They're not the superstars. They have a big 3, Brooklyn Nets do, so we'll see.
Well, yeah, Soham says, bring him to LA. Yeah, bring him to LA. Then it's going to be 3 more seasons of championships. So I think LeBron does a 3-peat, and then the GOAT conversation ends right there.
How much help does LeBron need, Mr. Kumar? Come on. You're the GOAT. You need to carry that team. Come on.
Hi, Bangalore Ballers. Welcome to the show. Just wait. I think Scott Fleming is already in the backstage, so I think it's
Let's move
time for
on.
us to move on. So once again, we have to move on to the spiciest section on YouTube, which is the Indian Tadka section. Let's spice it up with Scott Fleming, the technical director of NBA Academy India.
We got a special India Thirka segment for you today. Technical Director of NBA India, Scott Fleming, is here live right now with us for the Patel and Kumar show. Before we bring Scott on, we want to show a little quick, introduction of all the work that Scott is doing. So let's show that introduction, and then we'll bring Scott live on the show, Mr. Kumar.
Can't wait.
Can Ladies and gentlemen, let's welcome the technical director for NBA India, Scott Fleming, to the Patel and Kumar show. And Mr. Fleming, we cannot tell you how excited we are to have you on the show.
Hey, gentlemen, great to be with you. Always.
Thank you. Thank you so much for coming in. And of course, we have, met each other a long time back, and you've been in India for a very, very long time. First as the national coach of the Indian national team, and then now as the technical director of the NBA Academy in India. So I think you have a great relationship with India.
I do. I feel about half Indian, probably. This is my seventh year being connected with the incredible India, and from couple of different positions. So I've kind of seen it from all angles, but the whole time been involved with basketball, which is my passion.
Absolutely. Yes. And just to get into the questions, you've been, a college coach, you've been a coach in the G League, and of course, then the Indian national team. How's the transition been from, of course, coaching in the United States and then coming to India to coach the national team?
Yeah, I've loved all of those positions. Probably the biggest transition is my barometer of what a great player is. When you keep changing, levels, you have to kind of twist that a little bit and say, okay, when you're talking about high school kids and NBA kid or players, there's a pretty big gap right there, and then everything in between with the national team and the G League and those kind of things. So you have to kind of keep changing that barometer of what a great player is. So that was probably the biggest change, but I've loved everything I've done. I don't even really say this was my favorite. I love being on a college campus all those years, but I can't imagine my life without India and coaching that national team. I still am in contact with a lot of those guys on a regular basis, and now I get to coach the young kids on their way up. So it's been great.
Yeah. So again, ladies and gentlemen, please put your questions for Scott Fleming, and we will, say them live on the show. So, Mr. Fleming, how kind of was it like, that transition, like with youth development, like what have you enjoyed the most, about this position so far?
Well, you get to, get them when they're young. We're trying to bring them in even at, 13, 14 years old and getting them early. And so we have several years with them. And, the ultimate goal of this academy, or at least the NBA would say, to have NBA players, but there are a lot of goals prior to that. And most of these kids come in and they they want to go to college, they want to get a scholarship, they want to go to, an international situation if they can, and to do that and then come back and play for, the national team, their state teams, and we really feel like we're partners with BFI and the national team, and we're just trying to help develop these guys, help them reach their goals, but also strengthen, basketball in India.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And let me tell you, I think, I don't know if it is statistically proven, but you were one of the most successful coaches of the Indian national team, especially, of course, you won the Lusophobia games, and of course, you beat China as well in the FIBA Asia Champions Cup. And we'll come back to that. But how has the transition been from being the coach of the national team, where you were actually given, a set of players, and you just work with them for a couple of months, and then you have to go and play a tournament. Whereas here, as you said, it's been 13, 14-year-old guys. They come into the academy, and then, you get to work with them for 3 or 4 years. And so how has that change been?
Yeah, well, I love being a coach. I love having a team that I can develop and, go to war with and try to win games and championships. And so, I've been doing that for 36 or 7 years, something like that. I think I've coached over 400 players now at all levels. But when I came to India with the NBA the first time, I was in more of an administrative role and then doing camps and clinics. And I liked that. I enjoyed it. But my passion is being a coach on the court. And that was some of the decision on coming to the academy. So I could have a team. And even though they're younger, we play in tournaments. We have a league there. And so not only were we developing players, but we get to go to competition and get some strategy going and try to win games. And so, I'm kind of back at that, being on the court, my favorite part of all of this is practice. The games are fine. They're good. And you enjoy the process of trying to win, but that building up and being together in that gym and practicing and trying to improve. When I first came to India as the national team coach, that first year we weren't very good. We lost some games and lost them by a lot. And it just took a year at least to develop, from a defensive standpoint and develop the players and have them believe in my system. And it was, a year later, not until a year later, that we started being competitive with just about everybody, we played, win or lose. I think we finally got to the point where they had to come out and play if they were playing India. So it takes time, to get that point. But I love practice. I love developing players individually and a team.
Yeah, and speaking of youth development, there's currently 15 players of Indian players right now in the U.S. Playing and studying abroad. So. And most of those players were part of your academy. So were you expecting the numbers to be that high so quickly? And what are some of your thoughts about that?
Maybe not, to be honest with you. But I think they have goals when they come to the academy, and we talk to them early on. Even their parents, and one of the reasons they come to the academy is so maybe they have opportunities beyond basketball, whether it be the national team or whether it be overseas or go to college, get a scholarship. Yeah. And so as some of our top players, both on the women's side when they had NBA Academy camps and the boys' side, when they got to a certain point and they asked if they could go overseas, would that be a chance? We helped them along the way that way. But it was really their decision. We're not pushing them or saying they have to go or anything like that. But when they desire to go, we're going to help them do that. And most of it is that those practice sessions that, Ron Cass, my player development coach, works with them, does a great job of developing their skills and gets them to the point where they have these opportunities. And it's exciting to see that. Now we'll have to see in a few years, we'll see if it really clicks in as far as being, a college athlete. Some of them are at prep school. A few college. See how they do there. That's kind of that next step to not only be on a college team, but to excel. And I think we've got some players that can do that.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, absolutely. So I think we talked about, of course, a lot of the players who are in prep school and hopefully get college scholarships. But I think one guy who's been making news in the past few months has been Princepal Singh, who did get an opportunity to actually play in a G League team. And I think everybody in India is hoping that he gets an NBA contract soon. So can you talk a little bit about Prince Paul Singh
Yeah.
and what
Mhm.
Well, I was able to go down to Orlando for a few games, Ignite, the team that he's on, to see them play. And, people have to realize he was playing with one of the best young players in the country. They're going to be first-round draft choices, a couple of them in the first picks. And then they added about 4 NBA veterans, guys that were already proven in the NBA. So when people kind of looked at his minutes and he wasn't playing that much, there was a reason for that. He's playing with some really, really good players. But I saw him in practice. I talked to the coaches. They were really high on him. They talked about how hard he was working. And so they had some real positive feelings about him. One thing about Prince Paul, he has some things you can't teach. He's long, he's athletic, he's tall. And I think now the light bulb has really gone on where he is really desiring to be a great player. And so it's hard to predict. You have to be really good to play in the NBA. All the players, he has such a small percentage go on to play in the NBA. But I think he has some of the physical tools that may take him there. I'm not making any prediction to that point, but I think he has an upside to him that let's see how far he can go.
Yeah, and can you kind of explain to the audience that may not be, a bit known about the, the NBA G League Ignite team, the valuable experience that he's going to be getting, under Coach Shaw, under that program that just got established this year for athletes that didn't want to go to college, that have opportunity to develop their game and possibly, go to the NBA.
Yeah, so it was originally the D League, and now it's the G League. It's been around for about 20 years, and I coached 2 years with the Texas Legends in that same league. It was a great experience for me. Now, every NBA team has their own minor league team, their own G League team. So they're developing players, and they have two-way players as well that basically are on an NBA contract, but they play a lot of their time in the G League because they're not minutes. For these guys that aren't getting to play, this is a great opportunity for them. And then also, the G League is a chance for even some veteran players to kind of make their way back to the NBA team. But the team that he was on, basically, this was the first opportunity to have this Ignite team, and Prince Paul was the only player from our academy chosen from all the academies, not just from all the academies, to be chosen to be on this team. And in fact, he's the first one to ever be on there. So it's pretty historic, really, that he played on this team. And just the fact he's practicing with these guys every day is going to make him a much better player.
Yep.
Absolutely. I think if I were in this place, it would be like Santa Claus giving me lots of gifts, just being around Brian Shaw, some of those, veteran players. So like Amir Johnson was in his team, I think.
Jared.
Yeah. So, I mean, just getting that experience was a lot of fun. Just moving on to explain a little bit to the audience, what do you think, the long-term goal is for NBA Academy India?
Well, the highest goal is for us to develop, an NBA player that gets drafted and plays. Not an easy task. I never predict in 4 years or 5 years. I think we're just trying to work with these boys and help them to reach their full potential. And if they reach their full potential, things will fall in place, whether it's in college, G League, or NBA. Now they have to, obviously they have to put in the work. As any athlete does. We can't just, we can do so much for them, and they have to really have that burning desire to get there and spend time out of practice and spend a lot of time just improving their game. And they have to be good people. They have to be good citizens. Their NBA doesn't anymore just draft somebody on talent. They're looking for chemistry. They're looking for leaders, and so that's important as well. But I think we can have a lot of shorter-term goals than just having an NBA player. And again, like I mentioned before, I think we're trying to help the national team to develop players there. We're trying to get them a free education. If they can go to Canada or the U.S. or somewhere and get their college paid for, that's huge. And if it goes farther than as a player, and there are a lot of other opportunities to play professional basketball besides the U.S. and besides the NBA. Players are playing all over the world. We have our players in India already play in Japan and Australia and a few different places. And so those are great leagues as well, and they get paid pretty well to play there. So, those are all goals that we have, and hopefully at some point there'll be a professional league in India. I don't have a lot to say about that, but maybe that'll happen at some point.
Oh man, crossing our fingers that it does happen, for sure. And we had a question from Manish, and he's saying, "How can India increase its talent pool in basketball? What's lacking, and what's your advice?"
Yeah, so I'll just say from the time I first came to now, it's really improved, and some of it's based on the junior NBA program. We've now hit about 7 or 8 million kids in that program, and that is trying to just introduce them and get a love for the game and get playing ball. And then we also have NBA schools. That's kind of the next step if you want to be in a year-round program and get training every day. And then our academy is only about I think we're going into our fifth year, and so it's still relatively new. I mean, I think the benefits will really show more maybe in year 7 or 8, up to 10 when these young players move on. And so still a long way to go. I would never say, we've arrived or even close to it. I think basketball has to still become more of a priority. But I think the national team is trying to develop young players now even more so. So there are a lot of good things happening, but we just have to get a love for the game. And I think having players in the country that young boys and girls can look up to and have as heroes will help too. I think, they're on the national team, but as we maybe develop a pro league or something like that, where there is an opportunity not only to have a hero, but maybe I can play in that league someday. So hopefully that'll happen too.
Yeah, and Scott, what kind of players are you looking for, to join your academy? Is there like specific traits that you guys look for, things in a player?
Yeah, well, obviously, some natural things we have to look for, especially, we're trying to go on camp, so we have multiple years with them. I'm not saying that they have to be tall, but we're going to probably look at a lot of the young, tall kids that have a chance to, because those are a lot of the kids that get opportunities overseas and in college opportunities, even pro opportunities when you have a lot of height. Now, I've coached a lot of smaller players that were great players, by means. But if we're looking for talent, we're looking for athleticism and height, and they don't even have to be good basketball players at that stage. We just have to see potential and an upside to them, because there's some players that are really good at a certain age, and that's they're going to get a little better, but not a lot better. But you see other kids where they've got a lot of athleticism, they've got some size, they've got desire. Even though they're not that good now, you see this high, upside to them. And that's even when I was a college coach recruiting, I had to say, where's this kid going to be in 2 or 3 years? Not where, because he's a great high school player right now, but some high school players I felt like, they're about as good as they're going to get, and other ones you felt like, even though they weren't as good at this point, wow, this young kid has a chance to be great, in 2 or 3 years. So you have to look at potential more than anything.
Okay, so Bhushan Suryavanshi asked, who's your favorite coach in the NBA?
Favorite coach in the NBA? Well, I'm gonna, I think Quinn Snyder's a really good coach. I mean, I think a lot of them are. He's doing a great job. The guy Monty Williams right here. I'm in Phoenix right now. He's doing a fabulous job with the Suns. I mean, you could pick some of the ones that have been doing it for a while, but those are kind of the newer coaches, at least relatively new. They're really doing a great job with their teams, and they're disciplined. They've got a system of play. They play hard, and so those are a couple of coaches. And ironically, one of my former coaches and former players at the college level is an assistant with the Utah Jazz, Mike Wells, and so I kind of have a warm spot for them. He actually called me yesterday before the game. He was out walking here in Phoenix, and we talked for a while, and I wished him luck, and I guess they lost in overtime, I saw. So the Phoenix Suns are real. So there are a couple of coaches that I would put up there, but there are many other great ones as well.
Yeah, you can't go wrong with either, Quinn Snyder.
But but who was your inspiration in terms of your guru?
Well, I had a coach in college actually that got me started really with my style of coaching. I had coaches that that thought you had to hate them, to play. I had a few coaches that were so buddy that there was not a lot of respect, and it was just kind of peers. And I had a coach in my senior year in college that taught me you could really, and this doesn't flow with every coach's philosophy, but you could really befriend your players and have a relationship with them, but still demand respect. And so he kind of showed me that you could do that. And so I know that's not a big name, but I'll tell you, he's developed my coaching style more than anyone. But the other coach, some of them are college coaches, like, the guy that just retired, Roy Williams. He was somebody to look up to. Dean Smith in North Carolina. John Thompson at Georgetown. So I was a college coach for a long time. So those were some of the guys, that I was looking up to at that point, even though I was an NBA fan too.
Yeah, those are some great names. And we have another question. Soham is asking, who is the best Indian player in the locker room in your time with the team? Like, who were some of your favorite players, when you were the head coach of the Indian national team, Scott?
Yeah, I had a lot of them. Really, I've told people that the players in India were so coachable, and they would basically run through a wall for me. I came here, and that's different than the U.S. There's a little bit sometimes some entitlements, and they think they've arrived, and not all of them, but some are like that. Where I felt like the Indian players were so hungry, and so they were like sponges listening to what I had to say, and that was fun. But Vishesh, was great. He was kind of our leader when I first came here. We had a young team. People have said that we've played some young teams and beaten, but we were at that point we were a really young team with Amjot and Amrit Paul and some of those young players. I mean, we weren't any older than some of those teams that were supposed to be young that we were playing. It's just that those were the best players in India right then, and they're still playing, and that's 6 years removed or 7 years, whatever it is. So yeah, I would pick out a couple of guys, probably like Joginder. If he's still playing on the national team. He was a great leader. He was a great example. He was the kind of guy, first one to practice, last one to leave. Out there, on the side, working on all his ball handling and drills like that before we ever started practice. So that's fun to see.
Yeah.
Okay. I think we have a question from Reef4Per. How can we get into the NBA? Okay, I think this is more like a very technical question. Like, how do you get into the NBA Academy? I think.
Yeah, so there's a few different ways. And obviously, COVID's kind of thrown a wrench into some of our procedure on this. We had two regional tryouts in Bangalore and Kolkata last year before it all hit, and then we were scheduled to have one in Mumbai and Delhi, and we're inviting people from where, not just in those cities, but wherever they come from. They're open tryouts. Mm-hmm. And so we've done that. We've also, I've done scouting. I've gone to the U14 national tournament. We have other people in India that are looking at players. We also had a social media campaign where they can send in, and I think we're going to do that again. They can send in their information and videotapes of themselves if somebody would take them. But even if they want to send something to me, directly, they can do that. So we're kind of turning over a bunch of rocks to find players. It's not something that is easy. I mean, our goal is to have the best 20 players or so, in India at that young age. And we may miss a few. It's not a perfect process, but I think we have a lot of the better players, and so that's how you get in. You have to be invited, but we're open. There's no one that can't try. We're not denying anybody a chance to try out. So.
Absolutely, that's a great sign. I think all you youngsters, if you have tuned into the show, as Scott said, I mean, you can send your videos, your profile, and other details to Scott directly, and of course they'll take a look at it, screen them, and then of course call you for a tryout. Hopefully the COVID ends pretty soon and they can start with their tryout process in other cities as well, and a new batch of recruits can come back to the NBA Academy. But Well, I mean, that's pretty much all the serious questions we have.
Now for the fun part now.
Now for the fun part. But
For fun.
yeah, so okay, craziest coaching memory in India.
Ooh.
Well, there are a lot of them, but one was when I first got here, and we were practicing in Delhi, and I actually went to observe one of the youth camps, and it was hot. I don't know how hot it was, but I was just sweating and dripping and everything else. It wasn't air conditioned, and it came time for a break, and I'm expecting some water, anything H2O to try to cool off. And the coach brought me some chai, some hot tea. And so I was like, I said, is that what you do here on your water breaks? And so I've kind of been kidding about that. Now we do have water too, but at that point it was just here's a nice little. Now I love chai. In fact, I learned to love it. And I had it a lot. Any meeting you have in India, you've got to have some chai and some biscuits, right? So
Absolutely.
I
Chai break.
Yeah.
Chai
But that was funny. That was. Now this isn't so funny, but and I won't go into all. But one of the craziest things that happened was the whole turban issue and at the Asia Cup and having to take those off. And man, I was hearing from everybody in the U.S. all over the country. I was being interviewed, and we were really upset about that. I was, and I won't tell the whole story, but the next night, you can either pull your team apart or you can bring it together, and it brought us together. That was the night we beat China, that very next night, and so that was the craziest thing I've been a part of. Not so much funny, but just an awkward situation we tried to make the best of. So
blame in these players. That's so you can take it that as a catalyst for
a negative to a positive. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Next question, Scott. Your favorite Bollywood movie?
Well, I haven't watched a lot, but I remember when we first got to India, my wife and we watched the version of Aladdin. I'm going to say it's a musical, but almost all the Bollywood movies are kind of musicals, right? With dancing and everything else. But I don't know if you've seen that, but that was pretty good. That was, it's kind of a children's story, but it became, a full production of a Bollywood movie. So it was Aladdin.
Wow.
Nice.
Okay. Favorite Indian food?
Ooh.
No pray. Butter chicken. I mean, I don't even have to think about it.
You're not the first guest who has said that.
Especially from Ludhiana.
Yeah, absolutely. But I've had my cook I had in Delhi, and we still order it here. It's not quite like it is in India, but we enjoy some butter chicken over some rice. But I really enjoyed a lot of India food. Well, too much probably, and I can take the spices. My wife can't, but I'm kind of her taste tester. I can take those spices, bring it on the heat. But I would love anything like that.
Did you have to get used to the spice level, or did you, when you came to India?
I eat too much. I used to live in Alabama. I coached down there, and they have Cajun food basically.
Oh yeah.
That's spicy. Maybe you've had some of that where you are, but that kind of prepared me for the spices of India. Yeah.
Awesome. So, Scott, if you had to describe India in one word, what would it be?
Yeah, I was thinking about that. I would say, if this is one where I think it's a hyphen, but multifaceted. I remember telling people would ask me about India in the U.S. when I first came, and the best answer I could come up with is, every day I see something I've never seen before, and that's a compliment. It's just so many different things in India that you wouldn't see in the U.S. Believe me, and so very unique, multifaceted.
Sure. I know I'm gonna put you in a spot, but your best win as a coach, is it the Lusophobia games against Angola, or beating China in the FIBA Asia Champions Cup?
Boy, that's a close one. Even though a lot of people would say that win over China, it was the first one in 75 years or whatever. But the one thing I remember about the Lusophobia game, we won some close games there. We made it to the championship against Angola. That was in Goa, and I can still hear 4,000 people. This is the first time we really played a home game, in India, and that stadium was packed, and I can still hear them chanting India, India. It was just you talking about goosebumps and really feeling that support. And so I think that we had a sixth man that day in that crowd. And so as great as that China win was, and that was pretty special too, to do it at home and have that kind of crowd and that chanting behind you.
Well, that's awesome. That is really cool. I know that, India goes behind their national team. There's a lot of national pride, there. So that's
Absolutely
amazing. So what were your initial thoughts, perceptions about India when you first decided to come? And how did that perception, and did it match your reality?
Yeah. I didn't know much about India. I didn't know about basketball in India by any means. It kind of came through, I was working with the Texas Legends, and Del Harris and I, former coach of the Lakers, was on staff with me, and he had been contacted by the NBA and said they were looking for a national team coach in India. And I didn't know much about it, but I did some digging and I talked more. And I had a friend years ago that made the statement that said, you ought to do what you do best and go where it's needed most. Mm-hmm. And that kind of stuck with me when it came to coming to India. There are a lot of coaches, and my experience in the States has been great. I wouldn't trade them, but there are a lot of guys that can do that. And I felt like, my wife is a hero to me because she came to India with me and didn't bat an eye and said, we're going together. And so, that it kind of started there. So when I got to India, I would say the expectation even greater. I mean, I didn't expect a lot of things that I saw. I didn't know much about it. And so, for the first year, we were just fascinated by everything, still are, but, kind of get used to it a little bit. And it feels like kind of a second home to me now. But, those were interesting days when we first arrived to India. And it was really, we were pleased with what we saw, even more so than what we anticipated.
Sure. And I know we are almost coming to the end of the show, but casing as which India jersey do you prefer, the orange and white or the dark blue? I don't know.
Ooh.
Well, maybe I'm kind of a traditionalist. I like kind of going with the colors of the flag, of India. That's what he's asking. We had a lot of different uniforms, and they were fine, but I like showing off those country colors. So.
Yeah, and Ekalavias is saying Sean Flemming is the first lady of Indian basketball. So shout out to Ekalavias, and thank you everybody for tuning in.
We were at Cup. She was the only fan, and I remember her yelling out the crowd. Our player could actually hear her because there's no one else, and she would be screaming "Go India!" So if anybody was screaming "Go India," you knew it was her. So she made
Before we part ways, I know we're coming to the end of the show. Who are you rooting for this season?
Well, I've told you before, I'm a big LeBron fan, and that started early because I saw him play in high school when he was 14 years old, and wow. I tell the story that I came back to my college. I didn't know who he was, and they said, who'd you like down at that tournament? 8 players. I said, well. There's a 6'4" kind of skinny kid from Akron. His name's LeBron something. I mean, this is serious. I didn't know who he was. And a few months later, he was, on Sports Illustrated and going all over the world. So, I've been a Cavs fan, because I grew up in Ohio, but not a lot to root for these days. The other team I really pull for is the Dallas Mavericks because I work for them in their system.
Nice.
And I think, and I should have mentioned too, and you talk about great coaches. Let me back up and say Rick Carlisle, I think is one of them. And I got to see him in practice. So he probably should have been my first choice. But so those are the teams I kind of pull for. But I've become a Lakers fan. I love the legacy of LeBron. I just want to see it keep growing. So.
Yeah, we have a
Of
little.
course,
We have a little.
LeBron is going to win.
Of course, Mr. Kumar is a Lakers fan. I'm cheering for the Nets because I'm a KD fan. So we have a little bet to see who's going to win the championship. So we'll see.
The Nets just keep putting all-stars on that team. I don't know. They're pretty loaded. So
Right.
One last and final question. Who's better? Is it Mr. Patel or is it Mr. Kumar?
Oh.
That's a tough one.
I plead the fifth on that one. I think you're both pretty fantastic, and I couldn't shoot. You're dead even. So.
Well, thank you very much, Scott, again for coming on the show. We really appreciate your time and your insights about the wonderful work that you're doing with the Academy in India. Thank you for all your hard work, and thank you everybody for tuning in. So thank you, Scott.
You bet. Anytime. I loved it.
Thank you, and hope that we find an NBA star from India very, very soon.
Yes.
Absolutely.
Keep our fingers crossed.
Thank you, Scott.
Thank you. Have a good day. Bye.
Well, Mr. Kumar, what an amazing conversation that we had with Scott Flemming. We covered everything, from Principal C to India Academy to all the youth initiative that he's doing. Even, talking about some NBA there, Mr. Kumar. He's also a LeBron fan like you. So you guys had that in common.
Yeah, I usually try and get only LeBron fans into the show,
So it's 2 against 1, I guess. You're trying to double team against me.
But nevertheless, I think thank you guys for tuning in. And of course, it's customary that you subscribe to our channels, the Ekalavya YouTube channel and the Patel Pick and Roll Sports YouTube channel. And of course, follow us on at Patel and Kumar on Instagram and Twitter. And live chat is always open during the show. I think our next show is going to be on the 22nd of April in 2 weeks. Again, a roundup of the NBA and some more hot news that will come out of the NBA. And let's hope that we have a very interesting guest as well, which we will announce shortly. But thank you once again for tuning in. We had a fantastic show. Thank you to Scott Flemming, the technical director of NBA Academy India, who did share his insights on his work in India.
Yep. Thank you very much, Scott Flemming. He was amazing. Awesome guest to have on the show. His great perspective. I've definitely learned a lot, Mr. Kumar. Again, thank you, everybody, for tuning in so much to the show, putting your comments. It makes the show a lot more fun and interactive. Thank you, Mr. Kumar. And our next show is going to be April 22nd. We may have a special guest, a front office insider. So we'll just kind of tease it there. And until then, we'll see you in a couple of weeks. Signing out. Peace.